there. I'm Gabriel with the Caturday crew. Like I said, we throw interactive storyline infused events, themed events here in Vancouver, but we also want to try and educate and empower our community. So we started this Caturday College series just to have educated and capable people within our community pass along the knowledge to people who are trying to learn and attain these sort of things and let them try it out without having to shell out a shitload of money for college, actual college. At least it's a nice little way to dip your toes into subjects and stuff like that. So Sami has graciously allowed us the opportunity to show us his talents, and you guys have all showed up. So thank you for coming and checking it out. And yeah, you can check us out online, caturdaykcrew.org. If not, I'll pass it off to Sami.
Thank you, Gabe. Yeah, this is a collaboration here today between Caturday and a project that I run called Inventor Vancouver. And Inventor, for those of you who are curious, is kind of the main focus at the moment is showcasing live PA, live electronic music around the city with a focus on improvisation. There's also a lot of visual elements and stuff like that we do. Different people build and invent different cool little music reactive, interactive installations and bring them to the events we put on. Yeah, if you're interested about that, talk to me at the end. I can show you guys some way to get involved. The main ways is things like this. There's going to be a lot more education stuff. We're going to be bringing in a lot more producers here to the stage and having them talk about their production method. So if you're curious to see into the world of various established producers from the local scene here, and that's going to be ramping up this year. The other thing is there's a series called Inventor Live that I curate, which is basically a showcase of live PA acts and improv collaborative jams. The next one's on February 20th, and it involves, it's at the Waldorf in the big room downstairs, part of a 4-stage party. It's going to be a 3-hour live PA techno set by a group called Data Tastes. They're going to jam with Michael Fraser, who's a violin virtuoso, for those of you who don't know him at the end. Then a guy called King Darwin is going to go on, does wobbly music. Then I'm going to play, and you'll get the sense of what I do. And this guy called Hattori Tori, who is the fastest fingers I've ever seen, plays really fun, jungly type music. Anyway, that's enough about Inventor. Now we're going to talk about music production. So how many of you guys have tried to produce music before? How many of you guys feel happy with something you've made before? Okay, a lot less show of hands, but there's still enough. Cool, yeah, so I guess you guys are here because you're interested in music production, seeing as how this workshop is entitled The Many Aspects of Music Production. I asked this earlier, but I'll ask it again now. How many of you guys have used Ableton Live? And how many of you guys that put your hands up are familiar with the session view in Ableton Live? All right, so there's a little bit more iffiness there for that one, so I'm kind of glad that we're starting with this. What I'm going to do here today is basically show you guys what the session view is like, which is actually, in my opinion, very easy and very intuitive tool to use, and it's a tool that allows me to do what I do. What I do is a 100% improvised and completely live loop show. And I guess my background, I've been a musician my whole life, piano as a kid, drums starting in middle school. And took some music classes as electives in college. Went to my first EDM festival in the East Coast, Camp Disco in upstate New York. And on the third day there, and I was dancing my ass off in one of the dance tents to some just amazing electro. And I decided then I'm gonna make this my life. I want to be on the festival circuit and do that. That was 5 years ago. I moved to Vancouver 4 years ago, and 3 years ago is when I finally actually started working with live and working towards what I do now. A friend of mine, I used to tell all my friends oh, I'm gonna do this live show where I play drums and do live electronic stuff, but I don't know how to do it. And one of my friends who actually knew about this stuff eventually was you should check out this piece of software called Ableton Live. It'll make what you want to do easier. And so I listened to him, and it turns out he wasn't full of shit. He was actually telling me something useful. And I'm going to, over the next hour or so, kind of give you guys a lot of what I've learned, and hopefully it'll be useful to you guys. And yeah, at any point in time, if something doesn't make sense, please stop me and ask me about it. The farther we go with something not making sense, the less sense it'll make. So just nip it in the bud right away. Let's get it cleared and move on. And to be clear, this is going to be a mainly non-technical talk. It's going to be mainly focusing on the creative side of things, on like kind of the common blockages that producers come across, and actually things that are also appropriate for other art forms as well. But the first bit's going to be technical, just so you guys know what you're seeing up here, because I think it would be easier if you guys know what this interface is. On that note, this is Ableton Live session view. So you can guys see these strips that you have here, these vertical strips. These are called channels. Now for now, ignore everything except for this microphone thing, this thing that says mic up here. A channel in Ableton Live session view is basically a source for audio. And what Ableton Live does in this view is it'll take all the different sources of audio that you have and put them together into something that comes out of here in the master channel. Basically, it's a virtual mixer, if you will. And yeah, so you can have, there's two different types of channels you can have. The first is an audio channel, and that's what this mic thing is in here. And audio basically plays a stream of audio. That can be something like a microphone that's plugged into an audio interface, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a mixer that sends a digital copy of the signal to your computer, and you can interpret that in different ways. So that's what's happening here. I'm going to create a new, here I'll go to File, and I'll do everything using the File menu so you can kind of see how it works. So I'm going to insert a new audio track, and this time instead of selecting my voice to go through, what I'm going to do is find some kind of loop that I'm just going to toss in here. Just go with this baseline thing, see what that is. And this is the other kind of thing that an audio channel can do. It can play a file. So if I, whoop, and we'll go with the drum loop instead, because that's a bit too much bass for the subwoofer. There we go. So if you wanted to DJ with Ableton Live, this is what you'd be doing. You'd be bringing in songs in the form of a file and dropping them in here, and sticking and just playing them. A channel can have any number of these clips in there, but it can only play one at a time. So if you wanted multiple things going, they'd have to be in multiple channels. Now you're not limited to just files that you bring in. I could also loop my voice, for example. So I'm just gonna. And it's that easy to just get some kind of a groove going. And of course, you're not limited to your voice. You can, anything that you can plug in to a mixer, you can get into Ableton Live somehow. And in some of my past shows, I've used guitars and bass guitars. I've used various percussive instruments. I use this little synth over here. The options are literally whatever you can imagine, and then you need to have the technical know-how to make it happen too. But anybody can learn that. That's not. There's so many resources out there, and Jesse, when he gives his guest talk, will give a little bit of info about avenues for that. So that's the general audio capabilities. Now the other, I mentioned there are two types of channels. The other main type of channel is called a MIDI channel. How many of you guys here don't know what MIDI is? Okay, so MIDI was created in the 80s, I believe. Was it the 80s? Yeah. As a protocol to allow different hardware machines to communicate together. People were starting to put together these live shows that involved like a drum machine, a bass sequencer, and a keyboard, and this, that, and the other thing. And because all these machines are different, they each run on their own time, and every computer runs slightly differently, and over time it desyncs, it drifts apart from each other. And MIDI wasn't the first thing that was used to this, but eventually it replaced the first thing that was. It was used to both let things sync up together and also to send actual information. So you could have one machine acting as a brain and sending out data to other machines, telling all of the machines what to play. In the context of live, MIDI is basically the same thing. Like I basically send MIDI through a USB cable when I play this keyboard, and here I'll just record arm this, which means it'll actually send signal through. you can see when I press my buttons here, there's that yellow thing that goes up and down. And what that yellow thing says is, hey, I'm receiving a MIDI signal. But currently there's no sound because it's just an empty MIDI channel. There's nothing actually happening. You guys can also see it down here. Now what this interface down here is any channel that you've clicked on, it'll just show you what's happening in that channel. So here we have a microphone. The audio comes in here. It's going through a compressor, and I'm not going to explain what that is. It's out of the scope of this thing. And it's going through that EQ thing that you guys saw Jesse do earlier. And then it finally routes out and enters a mixer. In the case of the MIDI thing, in order to interpret this signal into a sound of sorts, we need to put in some kind of virtual instrument in here. So Live has plenty of instruments, so I'm just going to go and pick some random one. We'll go instrument rack with about a piano and key. Grand piano. I'm just going to grab this thing and stick it here. And now this MIDI channel is going to change to say grand piano. And all of a sudden we have sound coming through. And the beauty of software is you can make any sound you want, because as long as somebody can program it, you can stick it in there and have it work. You're not limited to just sounds that Ableton Live or whatever software you're using gives you. You can, plenty of people write these kinds of software for a living even, and there's countless choices out there for what kind of sound you can create. Does everybody get what's happened so far? Is anything unclear to anybody? Okay. So basically the way my live set works, what I do live is I get a bunch of drum loops and I'll play something, and then I'll just loop different sounds over it as follows. And then I usually have way more instruments, so I can pick and choose like a bass line, and I'll have harmonies going, and I'll have all these different things going. And yeah, that's how I make my music. And I'll give you guys a demo in a bit after we talk about the next section, which is groove. All right. So to help me with this section, I'm going to open up this group thing here that I had hidden away. And what a group channel is it's grouped a whole bunch of other different channels together. And if I open it up, you'll get to see my whole normal live set, which is pretty substantial in size. And I won't get into what's going on beyond that. All these clips you see here are different drum loops, and all these empty things here are different instruments that I can play. And then I have like a mic code in there as well, and channels for other instruments. Yeah, so groove, it's a term we're all familiar with, I'm sure. And in my opinion, it is the single most important thing of dance music. If you want people to dance to your track, it better have a really groovy groove, because that's what makes people say like, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to dance to that. It's like when that bass line just makes them feel something and makes them want to move their body. Now, groove, it's not just this thing that magically appears. For groove to exist, the person who made that groove has to really feel it. For example, how many of you guys have ever seen a dance band play before? Like a band that plays like funky dance music? I'm willing to bet that the bassist, the guitarist, the drummer, everybody who's playing was really into the music. It was really grooving the fuck out while they were playing their bass lines and playing everything they're playing and really getting down and dirty and into what they're doing, because it was fucking groovy and they wanted to like groove to their music. I mean, that's why they're up there. They're up there to make people dance. People pick up on that. They pick up on it big time. The people in the crowd will see the band getting into their music, getting down, just having a great time, and they'll take that energy and they'll amplify it and they'll get down and have fun too. Now, this idea of grooving to music does not need to exist solely in the world of live music. As producers, I think it's really important for us to groove to our own music as well. And it's something that I've noticed, at least in my brief 2-3 year existence as an electronic music producer. Not a lot of people do that, actually. Not a lot of people take the time to actually groove to their music. They sit at an interface and they twiddle knobs and put things in, and they never take the time to actually feel out their music. And that makes a big difference, in my opinion at least. And bear in mind, like everything that me and Jesse are saying, ultimately it's our opinions, and you guys can do whatever you want. So take advice or leave it. We're just giving you our thoughts here. What exactly do I mean by groove to your music? It doesn't need to be, you don't need to be like an amazing virtuoso musician that can do wicked bass lines to groove to music. It can be something super simple. So instead of talking about it, I'll give you an example. I'm just gonna get a little funky techno loop going. Or actually a house loop. Okay. Actually, no. One sec. I'm gonna just turn this back up and the group down. There we go. So now I'm gonna find a bass patch of sorts to use, and I'm gonna groove to this beat with that bass patch. And slow this down a little bit. All right, and this is gonna be something really simple. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play a note to like this. That's all it's gonna be, and I'm just gonna get into it, and I'm gonna like forget about you guys for a bit and just enjoy myself playing this really steady thing that, in my opinion, anybody can do. Like, sure, you might not necessarily hit it like on point every time, but that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters for me now is I'm gonna have fun playing something really simple. So I'm playing around with a couple different things here at the same time. There's only one note that I'm hitting, but I'm changing how hard I hit it. I'm having fun with that, trying to create some variance, and I'm also tweaking the mod wheel here, which changes the sound. And now I'm gonna do this for a little while, and then as I get going, I'm just gonna start to like vary up what I'm doing a little bit more, and just get into it with just one note. Now, the point of this is that if I am enjoying my music and I'm having fun doing it, chances are somebody else will as well. That's really all it comes down to. If you don't find your music fun and you're not enjoying making it happen, what's the point? Maybe other people will have a different attitude, but to me, having fun is important to me. And I think if you have fun while you make your music has an element of fun imbued inside it that carries across. And you don't need to be perfect. Like what I'm doing here, like I'm recording every single thing that I'm doing, and that's something that I generally do whenever I'm producing music, so that while I have fun, I can then go back and be like, okay, I remember there was this bass line that I played like 20 minutes ago. I forgot what it sounded like, but I remember I had fun doing it, and that's the thing that like I had the most fun doing while trying to make this thing. Let me go back in time and see where it is. And here, so I'll show you what that looks like in Ableton Live. I'm not going to get into this interface, but this is the timeline interface, which is the standard for any media editing software that uses video or audio. And yeah, you can't see too much here. So if I go down to where the bass line is, here, so it'll be this. So this here, if we were to stop the recording and go into there, you have all the data that I just sent in there. And let's say you didn't play it perfectly, but you still had fun. You could go in there, grab that information, and tweak it so it does sound perfect. But you've already captured like the raw groove that you really dug for whatever reason. And let's say you're such a talentless person that you can't like actually play the 4 notes you want to play, but you can do it with 1 note. Well, then just play your groove with that 1 note, and then go in later and move the other notes around so you actually get the note sequence that you want. But the important thing is to get the rhythm that you're really into, and you don't even need to have a keyboard. You can use any device like. So that's me trying to play a bass line. Clearly, it doesn't sound. It's way too high up there in the octave levels to be a bass line. But I got that rhythm down, and now I can take it and move it down a couple octaves and just work with it that way. How many of you guys have never played an instrument before? Anybody? Nice, a room full of musicians. Okay, how many of you guys don't feel too confident with your musician skills? All right, do one of you two want to come up here and try grooving out to a different beat? One of you, baby? James? Yeah, James. Everybody give it up for James. Just watch out for this cable here as you step over. All right, now James, what kind of music do you want to groove to? Breaks, drum and bass, techno, house, halftime. Techno? Okay. All right, so he wants techno. So, and do you want to play a bass line? Do you want to play a higher instrument? What kind of thing? Okay, sounds good. Let's give you a techie. We'll make it a little faster. All right, great 4 chords. Let's see what this sounds like. Oh, let me disable the last instrument. Get it? Actually, want something a little more stabby. Try that. This guy. Yeah, no, that's totally fine though. So what you did there is you captured the sequence of things that you kind of want to capture, and you can go in and edit it so that it actually like gets the rhythm that you want. But there's something different. Personally, I believe that it is different when you actually play it. Maybe that's total bullshit and I'm just making this up, but I personally do feel strongly about that. Also, just piece of advice to everybody: the more you dance to your music, the easier it is to play in rhythm. Though I've been playing drums my whole life, so I have a very solid sense of rhythm. But yeah, give it up for James, everybody. That was awesome. Anybody else want to try grooving out to something? Coming up. Yeah, 2 people who don't feel too comfortable playing music. I'm glad you guys are coming up here. Sweet, you're watching after that. Do you want different rhythm, different anything? Okay, how about this? I'll give you a drum and bass. Actually, no, I'll give you a breaks thing. Here, stop that. Awesome. That's awesome. All right, everybody give it up for Emmett. What's your name, Emmett? Emmett? Okay, yeah, give it up for Emmett. Does anybody have any other questions about groove at all? Or any like comments maybe? Maybe you've experienced something about groove you want to share.
It's like, to me, a groove is like the emotion that you feel in response to the rhythm. So if you're like feeling that emotion guys know what quantization is? Yeah? So, quantized music is like very mechanical. It's like perfectly attached to the grid, whereas a real live drummer will like certain notes will be faster and certain notes will be slower.
Fluctuate.
Yeah, they'll fluctuate within. So when you play live like that, you can capture those that push and pull within the measure, and it'll be less mechanical. Yeah.
And on that note, a lot of house and techno and stuff like that producers, they'll create their like super quantized thing, and then they'll deliberately try to push it off a little bit in order. And that's the best house tracks and techno beats all have that like artificially added realness, if that makes sense. And people spend a lot of time like really figuring out how to make that happen, to take their productions to the next level. The alternative you could do is just learn how to play the drums and rock it out. All right, so next up is something quite similar to this groove thing. I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of creative flow ideas. My live show is completely improvised, and when there's a dance floor, generally speaking, I have to make sure that there's stuff to dance to. So over the years, I've developed a couple different things that I do when I like just literally have no idea what to do, to force myself to do something. The single most important thing is the groove thing I just talked about. Like my show would be impossible if I wasn't able to just like feel stuff out and get into it. Like here, I'll just show you guys what I basically do when I first start playing something. I'll play some kind of drum loop like this little halftime thingy. And then I'll find some kind of instrument. Let's see, it's a. Let's see, 1 second. All right, and then I'll basically just mess around for a bit. And once I kind of like find something that I like, I'll figure out how I want to make it more groovy and turn it into a groove that I like build other stuff off of. And usually when I start doing stuff, I like to keep it really simple, like 1 note to 3 notes kind of thing. Just so, because I don't have a music theory background personally, and it's just a lot easier to like work with smaller numbers of notes. Now, here are a whole bunch of other things that I do. If I'm stuck and I don't know what to do, sometimes I just pick 3 notes completely at random off the keyboard and make something work with that. So let's say, for example, I'm going to take this note, that note, and that note over there. Just pick totally at random. In giving myself a constraint, the options for making this work all of a sudden drop down dramatically, because most things sound not necessarily that good. Actually, this is in a dissonant chord, so it actually does work okay. But yeah. So here, I'll show you an example of what I would do in this case. You know, I'm gonna play it along with this, and I'm gonna pick a different set of 3 things that like traditionally sound, according to Western tonal music, sounds bad, and see what I would do with something of that sort. Let's switch to this here. The thing that's like most unifying about my set is that I'm always playing. It's a very playful environment. I just play around with knobs, with things like this, whatever, mod wheel, pitch wheel, and I just have fun with it. And that's why my set works. I give myself the freedom to explore, to have fun, and not worry about it if I fuck up. Like I fuck up every single set I've ever given in my life, but the crowd is okay with it because they realize what I'm doing. They realize I'm exploring. They realize that it's improvised, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. But this is a very particular kind of set. Most people don't do an improvised and looped show. But yeah, so now, like I said before, I'm gonna pick like things that. So yeah, let's take those through. Different three. So the whole point of what I'm doing here right now is to say that if you constrain yourself majorly, it becomes really easy to figure something out because you don't have much choice. So you do one thing, it sounds bad. You do another thing, hey, that sounds okay. If you fiddle around with that little thing there, and all of a sudden you start to have a lot more cool stuff coming out. At least for me, that's the case. Something that's a variance of this is to pick random chords and just constrain yourself on that front. So I, as somebody who does not have a music theory background, here I'm going to pick a different instrument here. Actually, this one says great for chords, so we'll stick with that one. What I like to do is just pick random notes like I just did, and just keep playing chords until I find like a nice sequence that I like. So in this case, I've already found like these just two harmonies that I like together. So I'm just gonna record. One sec. We'll go back to breaks. And I'm just gonna record like a sequence of those things over it. And now I have a constraint of 3 notes, and I realize that in terms of music theory, you're not in terms of music theory, of course, you're not just limited to those 3 notes to make it sound good. But I don't have a music theory background, and I know that the 3 notes I just played there will sound good. So that's going to be my limitation that I'm deliberately putting for myself, just so that I know that what I'm playing is going to sound good. And then once I have something established, I'll start to bend the rules a little. I'll mess around, hit one note elsewhere. If it sounds good, okay, I'm going to go with it. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's already in the past. Can't worry about it. And this is also how I produce music. Like I'm talking about it in terms of my live sets, but I also produce music the exact same way. It's like when I've made albums before, and that's how I do my music, or rather, one album, not albums. And it's the same exact method. So I'm not. This advice doesn't necessarily need to only go to people who are doing live improvised shows. So here, I'll get a bass line in here. And then same thing, add a melody, and so on and so forth. Now what I'm going to do here is the same thing I just did, but instead of finding just 2 chords, I'm going to keep exploring to show you so for my live shows it tends to be a little simpler, but when I produce music I like to find things that are a little more complicated than just 2 chords. So I'll just show you what my exploration process is like. Let's say I'm going to produce a track right now. This is what I would do. So I kind of like that sequence except for the first note. I didn't really like how that first chord goes, so I'm going to repeat the sequence except for that and try to find a way to like have it continually moving. And there you go. That last little I wasn't such a fan of, so in a production I would go in and just... I like that little going down one, but not the second one. And then it's the same thing. You have this foundation to kind of work from. All right. Any questions so far? All right. So other options. I'm just going to throw out some more ways to be able to just get into production. And what I'm hoping is happening here is that you guys like see something that you're like, I like that idea. I'm going to try to use it in my thing. So I'm just going to give you some more ideas, and hopefully one of them will click for you. One great thing is to just forget about chords and scales and all those things entirely, and let Ableton do that work for you, or some other piece of software that lets you translate, just create a scale. So Ableton has this piece of effect, I believe, is MIDI effect, called scale, and it's got another one called chord. And what it basically does, here's someone, I'm just gonna toss this onto this bass line thing. And now what's gonna happen is whenever I play notes, oops, switch to the bass line. Hello, oh, hello, there we go. Switch to the bass line. So that's clearly working. Now what I'm going to do here is it lets you basically pick a whole bunch of kinds of scales. So let's say G sharp. And now, wait, is this actually working? No. James, you know more about the scale here than I do. Where? Oh, I see what you're talking about. Ooh, gypsy scale. Let's go with that. So we'll replace this with the gypsy scale. And now, it's still not working. Oh, am I in the wrong? You know what? I bet. Yeah, I'm in here. Okay, so we'll switch this back. Okay, now, even though I'm just hitting all the white keys, it clearly is not all the white keys. So now I can like just tap around and know that it'll sound good in this weird scale that I've never heard of before. And just so on and so forth. And you can like just go through these things and just, here, enigmatic scale, no idea what that is. Let's see how it sounds. And so on and so forth. Similar concept is the chord, which basically lets you take one note and have it be an entire chord. So I'm just going to disable this guy here, scale. So now I'm just going to press one note. And I'm going to find some kind of chord that lets me do house for to go. Okay, I bet I can play a house beat and just make something sounding really cool with this. So let's just try that. Here, I'll go with this beat. so on and so forth.
And then, of course, once you play this thing out, you can then go in and figure out, what is this thing doing? Well, here it's taking one note, shifting it up 3, one note up 7, 1 minus 12. You can figure out what that corresponds to, and then you know all the notes you played, and you can layer something else over that. So it's kind of like this kind of backwards way of figuring out, say, this thing just sounds cool, makes it sound cool, doesn't do anything. That's the point, that's where you want to get to. You want to get to the point where you can just have fun, not think about it. That's the key, it's not thinking, it's just feeling. And do something that makes you happy. And then once you've made that thing that makes you happy, then you can go back in and analyze it and figure out, like, how do you actually take it to the next level now that you have this foundation. Any other questions?
Just want to point out that you're stopped recording into the arrangement just like 2 seconds ago.